Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope this is working. Miriam will give me a nod and tell me that you can hear me and see me quite clearly. It's all good, says Miriam. Fantastic. My name is Graham Hitchin. Welcome to this afternoon's session of Meet the Makers. I know that there's plenty of other competing items on the other part of Beyond, and I know that for some it might be lunchtime, potentially for Miriam now, who says she hasn't eaten all morning, so you should definitely stock up on some food or drink or something, Miriam. Anyway, so what we're going to do this afternoon, we've got 4 fantastic projects, a mixture of different projects using, most of them using AR in some way or another, all of them, I think, using AI. And they're all really interesting examples of projects or companies developing projects in really innovative and creative ways to test out different ways of either using technology within creative industries, or in, I think, at least one case, looking at how creative technologies can be applied into other sectors. So if anybody's been on this before, you'll know the format. We've got about 15 minutes for each of the presenters. I'm going to jump in towards the end of that 15 minutes for all of them, and I'm going to take any question and answers that have come in. If you've got any questions, please use the chat box. That's the best way of doing it. So type your comments or questions in the chat box. Okay, so first up is Guy Gadney, who's going to be talking about a project he's been working on in theatre with Charisma AI. So I'm going to hand over to Guy, who's going to talk to you about that project. Guy.
Brilliant. Thanks, Graham. And thank you, everyone, for being here during lunch and all of that good stuff. So Charisma AI, for those who you don't know, is a technology storytelling platform that powers interactive narratives. So in the TV world, we work with BBC, with Sky, to create interactive versions of TV shows. And we have our own Charisma app, which is around interactive versions of comic books and graphic novels. So and what's important to us on all of this is the core of the story itself and how it's changing with the introduction of AI and increasingly 5G technologies as well. However, the project I want to share with you today is a bit of a sort of how-to guide. As the pandemic hit, we started talking with Creation Theatre based in Oxford and Big Telly Theatre, and Zoe Seaton, I think, is talking later this afternoon about how technology can help, really, and specifically how Charisma might be able to help build projects. So the project we produced with them jointly was Alice in Wonderland. And I'll share this screen here. This is where we are. And Alice was so ambitious, and I still think it is probably the most ambitious piece of digital theatre ever produced, ever. And I'm happy to be challenged on it. We integrated so many different things and managed to pull it off. And it was wonderful. You know, you want that feedback, which is twofold. One is where the audience doesn't notice at all. And the other one is where people who do know said, I can't believe you managed to do that. So by way of a little introduction, let me show you some bits and pieces. And I know I've focused on the sort of 3D video and immersive layer. So I'll show you a bit of this. The introduction to Alice sees you as a participant on a Zoom call heading down the rabbit hole. and to be clear, what you could see there was well, there's a live Zoom tiles of all the audience who were tuned in to see the show. So we were taking in, you know, multiple Zoom video tiles, splitting them all apart, putting them into a 3D world, flipping them over as you fell down. And it was huge fun because you get to see all the audience waving at each other already in this immersive world. And then you land in Wonderland. And if you look here, this is Alice.
After such a fall as this, I shall think nothing of falling down the stairs. Are you all okay?
So now what we see here is where we start to go interactive with the narrative. So we've taken the audience down the rabbit hole. They're in Wonderland. They've met Alice, and now you have 6 different options. You have 6 different storylines that you can go down and see and explore, and each one of those is has a live actor sitting behind it. So there's quite some element of choreography here. And from an audience perspective, what you're doing is you're selecting each one of these different options to take you into the show itself. And behind the scenes, it looked a bit like this. So this was the very first drawing we did, really, of the narrative structure for Alice. And this is really modeled on a lot of stories that we do within Charisma, where you might start on quite a linear way because you're effectively doing level 1 in a game. You're introducing people to the rule set, into how the thing plays, into what they should expect. We take them down the rabbit hole, and then we branch out into choice. And that not only gives them a sense of agency and the ability to change the story, but it really makes them feel that interactivity. And then we branch it out into into other sort of areas here. And you can see, as this is a nice sort of working title slide here, the croquet game was actually a 3D real-time croquet game played on mobile by all the audience and the cast. And the magic was real magic, which was a real magic trick that happened at the end with a card trick that involved everyone at home. And I still don't know how they did it. Behind the scenes, though, let me just show you this quickly, this is what Charisma looked like. So, hello there, Wonderland. Wanderer, are you lost? This was the first experience that the audience would have of Alice in Wonderland, with the Cheshire Cat saying, "Are you lost?" And then Charisma powering all of the potential options that the player might say. So you go to the website, you say yes, no, we're not lost, or whatever it might be, and that would then drive into the storyline. And just by way of sort of illustration, this is an example of this particular experience was written with Charisma. So you can see all of the different structures and how they relate to that interactive narrative structure that we put in the beginning. So sitting all of this was sort of a wonderful team who pulled together to choreograph all of this live, and it really felt like a live theatre production. You know, we had almost like the walkie-talkies in a sort of physical theatre space. We had our WhatsApp groups with everyone coordinating, counting down in seconds as to when each scene started and finished. And this was the Cheshire Cat, by the way, that powered. So Alice had a wonderful sort of design aesthetic, which is quite handmade, and we were able to therefore animate the Cheshire Cat, who sort of appeared and disappeared and dissolved into the ether, and then lip sync it using Charisma out into this. So sort of really nice handmade stuff. Finally, the piece that I think is sort of the legacy for this is, it's fine to show these projects, and that's great, but we need to keep people paid. We need to keep them employed, and we were very fortunate in this project to receive Innovate UK funding to be able to help us produce the production that would allow more money to go out to freelancers, more money to go out to production and cast, and then also to fund the handbook so that we can then share that knowledge. because our goal is it's wonderful to be talking at conferences like this, but we need to be able to get it out to practitioners so that anyone who is trying to earn a buck, and by the way, Alice was not free. Audiences bought a ticket, as they do for all of creation's shows who have been super active over the course of this lockdown. We created the handbook, and this is a free handbook available on charisma.ai website, which showed people how to produce one of these shows. And it really is, it's the handbook. It's the handbook for how to produce something which is complex, but also is eminently feasible with all of the different performers, Alice here, performing in their own houses and bringing it to life. Behind the scenes, I'll show you this quick shot. So this is us behind the scenes of not in Charisma, but this is us pulling together all the different video feeds and the PC that powered the whole thing behind the scenes. And finally, just to finish on this, here is the cast, because I think these guys behind the scenes, the crew and the actors did a brilliant job in bringing all of this to life, and I think we were supremely lucky to be part of that. So my feeling is that what we did there was to test, was to experiment with commercial models as much as storytelling and technology, but also then share it. And we wanted to get the message out, which is why we sort of wrote the whole thing up. So that was the introduction to Alice, which was wonderful, and spawned many new productions from Big Telly, where we continue to work with Creation Theatre. We've one new productions coming in 2021, and feel that really now is the time to learn from these projects, to get the word out there, and see what everyone else can make. So thank you very much.
I have to ask permission now to come in, and I can't jump in and out of this call like I should, but that was really helpful. That was really good. There aren't any questions yet in the chat box, so I'm going to use this partly to do a shout out to people if they've got any questions. But one question from me, what I thought was really interesting, you're describing is something that takes as it were, the traditional analog model of immersive experience, which is theatre, and creates that digital experience, that very, very interactive experience. Can you spend a couple of minutes just telling us about the technology and how you, as it were, how you were taking traditional methods and applying them? What are the technologies that you were deploying through that process?
Sure. So, and the first thing to say, I think, is that there is, while there is an element of sort of Zoom weariness of screen things, theatre can bring it to life in ways which actually makes sense. There's a real value here, and the value is in a couple of areas that we learnt in this. One is that unlike a physical theatre where you have to be there, any world can be in one of these productions in real time. So we had families who, where one part of the family was in the US, one was in Africa, one was in the UK, and they all bought tickets for the same performance. And it was a way for that family to come together and experience something rather than just having a standard Zoom call. So obviously we use Zoom and really pushed it very hard, bringing to life the different, trying to get out of breakout rooms and trying to make it sort of seamless. So Zoom was important, and all the green screen technology that it used. We green screened up to the eyeballs, of course. Charisma AI powered the Cheshire Cat. So the first thing that you went into, the first thing you saw was the Cheshire Cat, and you talked to the Cheshire Cat, and the Cheshire Cat was your guide, as it is in the book. The 3D video side was all based around Unity 3D engine. We do work in both Unreal and Unity, but this was done in Unity. And then there's some sort of magic, in the way that we then ingested all of those feeds and then sort of replayed them, because you have to ingest sort of munge it all up, get it all right, and then broadcast it out all in sort of super real time.
What was the
So it was
toughest stuff? What was the toughest stage? Sorry, the pun there.
I think, well, remembering that this is a live show, so I think coordination of live events and you know, never work with children, dogs, and the internet. You know, there was a moment, or I think 10 minutes before one performance, where we our full office internet went down, which was the both redundancies all went down, and so I had to hop in the car, tethering it to my phone, and the show went on. So I think that was it more than anything. It was just dealing with pioneering things, you know, and we learned so much, Graham. We learned we really felt that we were doing things for the first time, which, having been in this industry for, you know, way too many decades, I really enjoyed. It was sort of back to basics again.
Okay, that's brilliant, Guy. That was really, really interesting. And I think your points at the end there about, you know, ultimately you can have as many smart technologies, but ultimately if your internet breaks down halfway through, then it's, you know, that I think we've all experienced that in one way or another over the last 9 months. Guy, thank you very much. I'm going to ask you to leave the stage now. A round of applause from me, and I'm sure from everybody else.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then, as Miriam has just posted, next up we've got Denise and Mike from Immortal XR. I'm going to go off stage left and leave Denise and Mike to introduce themselves and tell us about their project.
Wonderful. Thank you, Graham. Hi, my name is Denise White. I'm the founder and CEO of two companies, SpatialX and Blink XR. We are a collection of XR startups based in Media City, UK, up here in the sunny north of England. And we, you know, SpatialX was started around 2017. We spent the first sort of 2 years of our startup journey in R&D, mainly to try to solve problems in the XR space, and specifically in the mixed reality space, because we spent a lot of time traveling around the world to different conferences, and as fun as that was and is, you have to solve problems, right, if you're going to add value in business. And so from a SpatialX perspective, we developed a 10-year roadmap to take us into 2030 that really concentrates in 3 areas where we feel we can add the most value, right? So in entertainment, in communications, and in commerce. And Blink XR started life as the idea to sort of rule them all, really. We wanted to create a new way to merge realities, both the physical world blending in with the virtual, and of course making that happen and possible through immersive technologies. And as I mentioned, specifically looking at mixed reality with the Microsoft HoloLens and HoloLens 2 devices. So I'm going to share my screen now, because it's always a little bit easier to share these concepts visually. Bear with me one moment. Okay. So there we go. So Blink XR, we are all about creating Earth's first mega mall in XR. We've had to reprioritize the way we go about this, of course, because COVID hit, and we were actually planning on opening our first kind of demo store, as it were. But imagine that you're on the high street when we're all back in the high street again and in full force. Imagine you're opening the door to that store and there are no products inside. You put on a headset and everything you experience is happening holographically. So we're able to use our AI engine in the same way that Netflix uses theirs for content recommendation. We can do the same thing for in-store shopping and all of the different types of entertainment experiences that you can have in a real-world environment. So that is the long-term vision for Blink. And because, as I mentioned, because COVID hit and we had to sort of rethink, okay, well, obviously we can't emphasize physical spaces now, but what we can do is we can reprioritize the entertainment experience, and that's exactly what we've done. So we've been working very hard on a product called Immortal XR. We are scheduled for our beta release next year in Q3 2021. And Immortal XR is all about turning music artists and influencers into holographic superstars. So we do that through volumetric capture of the artist. So we have a full 3D rendition of that artist, and we also capture their voice. Okay, and what we've been working on, and what I'm going to show you in a moment, I'll give you a little sneak peek behind the scenes, and I'll turn over to our CTO, Mike Koss, who's we're going to look at the deep voice engine. But essentially, we're creating a new kind of chat app, and it's super exciting. It's the case where you'll be able to put your headset on, and we're even going to make an adaptation for smartphones as well. We don't want to leave people out with this experience, but it's really best experience with the HoloLens. You put on your headset and you're able to actually see the artist sitting on your couch. You can have a cup of tea and you can literally start having a conversation with him or her. We've modeled our example around an artist called Grimes, who you may or may not have heard of. It's a partner of the wonderful Elon Musk. And, I think it's going to really change how artists will be able to interact with fans. So we like to think of it as we're creating a new AI-driven synthetic media format. It's a completely new format. It's a new way for music artists specifically, and also influencers, of course, to interact with their fans. Over time, the artist will actually train their digital clone. And so, over time, they'll be able to ask, the consumer will be able to ask questions of that artist in a very conversational way. And as I said, over time, as the engine is trained, the artist is going to have essentially a content management system. They can actually, they're going to feel like they're talking to themselves, but what they're actually doing is creating that level of intelligence within the system. So let me show you under the hood what's going on. So we're integrating different aspects. If I'm a music artist, let's say I'm Grimes, obviously I'm going to have Twitter, I've got Instagram, I've got YouTube, I've got everything going to support kind of my propagation out to the fans. So what we're going to do is actually ingest that content into our system. And all of that's going to be used to train the AI engine that's powering this thing behind the scenes. And in addition to that, we have something we call clone diaries. So that is in effect the artist's content management system, right? It's an app on their phone that they can open up and they can speak into it, and they can talk about anything they want. Mike will come on to it in a moment, but we do have ways to actually segment sentiment analysis. So, all of those things can actually be put in the appropriate bucket, right? So if you want to sit down and talk about your childhood and things like that, then you most certainly can. Mike, are you able to interact with me here? And do you want to maybe talk a little bit more at this point about what's going on here behind the hood?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I have a little icon, so that always worries me slightly. So anyway, hi, I'm Mike Koss. I'm the Group CTO for Blank XR. So yeah, as Denise said, I mean, it's a very exciting sort of piece of technology that we're looking to. And I just wanted to touch on the sentiment analysis piece that you mentioned there. One of the big hurdles that we currently see within sort of cloned voices is a lack of inflection and emotion. And having access to the artists, we'll be able to get them to sort of create models that will simulate different emotional types. And as I'm sure most people are aware, when it comes to machine learning and artificial intelligence, the data set is key and the biggest thing that we have. So what I'm really excited about is having access to these artists and getting them to actually speak with different levels of emotion, different inflections, taking that and then using the sort of, the clone voice engine to then have them, it can be as simple as a tweet. You can have that person sat on the couch, in Denise's case, drinking a cup of tea with them. In my case, it'll be a stiff brandy. But then you can ask them to read them, read me your tweets. Obviously, using the HoloLens and using voice-driven commands, we can then get that information back to our AI engine, which will then pull up the right sentiment based on what the right sort of tweet is there. So if it's one of sorrow, it will be a sorrowful rendition of the reading. If it's one of joy, it will also be positive. So, it's something that I'm really looking forward to being able to sort of deliver. And Denise, do you want to just show maybe play the audio that we've done?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is an example of the input audio of an artist. So what we're doing, as I mentioned earlier, is we're able to give the artist the capability to turn on or off the ability to ingest different aspects of social media. So in this case, we're actually training the voice engine using an interview clip as an example, which I'm going to play you an example of the artist's actual voice from an actual interview clip. And then I'm going to play another audio example, which is the output. And that is the beauty of the AI deep voice engine. So here's what the artist actually sounds like. It's just a short clip.
possibly do to go insane would probably lead to something good. I was like really into Hildegard von Bingen at the time.
And as you can hear, that is the voice of Grimes. And the output, which is the synthetic voice.
I was having a baby this week, so I literally didn't realize my Italian Vogue cover came out. Simulation feels like it's at level 10 at the moment, might be offline for a bit as of today. But this is an honor of the highest order. Thanks so much at Vogue Italia.
Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out a few things here. Grimes speaks really fast. And training a model with that pace of voice has been a fun challenge, let's put it that way. But just leveraging this little piece of like an interview, right? Just something as simple as an interview and getting that, you know, off YouTube and then training a model. It sounds like a close approximation. Now, fast forward to Q3, when we have actually access to the artists, we have hours and hours and hours of them speaking in content. We can then train these models in, you know, you'll see a 10x, 100x improvement in that voice synthesization. Couple that with a holographic representation of that artist sat on your couch again, that you're staring at through your HoloLens as a pass-through. It will just, you know, once realized, this I'm really hoping will change the way that we interact with our favorite artists and content creators. And to be honest, you know, now is definitely the right time to be looking at this. Obviously, COVID-19 has happened. We're all either sat at home majority of the time, going out to clubs or anything, theater, as the previous example, is a thing that, you know, is a distant memory. Augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, the time is now, right? 70 to 75% of people up to the age of 40 are aware of what augmented reality is. Pokemon Go was a thing, that was a massive success. And now we're looking at like the HoloLens 2 that sort of launched in 2019, and it's almost at a consumer price point, which means that we can actually get these devices into people's homes and, you know, touch wood, there's not another pandemic, but should we, you know, enter another point whereby we are heavily restricted in what we can do, this should allow us to still have that form of entertainment and connection with the people that we, you know, want to have that connection with. Now, one thing I do want to just stress on here is that obviously by creating a virtual clone of a person, there can be some slightly tricky ethical and moral implications. And one of the things that we are striving at Blank XR is really to make sure that the content remains in the control of the content creator and the artist. We have a very detailed ethics and sort of morals board that every single member of staff can feed into. And I think going forward, that has to be really key with this sort of technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what we have for you for today, Graham.
Fantastic, Denise and Mike. Thank you. That was really great. And I'm struggling. I'm still getting my head around the different aspects of what you were proposing. Although the great thing about the AI that you've adopted is that it did make Grimes actually more understandable because it slowed down the voice and I understood what your AI said.
There were still bottles of bourbon involved in that to work, but it did take a heck of a long time. But you know, I think that being able to assist with clarity is going to be a big thing as well. Not everyone is sort of confident giving talks or speaking, and being able to, even if it is just slow it down by a fraction, can be quite beneficial. Can you just say, we're out of time nearly, but just say something about applications. You said right at the beginning, Denise, in-store shopping.
Yes.
I mean, are there any particular directions that either, you know, short term or where you'd like to go with it further down the line that you see this being applied?
Absolutely. So the concept for Blank XR touches three areas. So the traditional mega mall, just quickly, comprises of shops, restaurants, and cinemas. And what we're doing is using immersive technologies to transform and rethink that experience in the physical world. So you can imagine one day, when probably about the midpoint is what we're planning for, around 2025 to open our first physical venue, you'll be able to go in. You'll have a completely transformed type of mega mall, still multi-store building, but the types of applications like Immortal XR, and we are also working on something called Retail XR. These will be holographic experiences that you're experiencing with a HoloLens and potentially even with the new Apple Glass glasses when they come out and others like that. And you'll see things in a purpose-built way holographically. So you can imagine with something like Immortal, of course, we're going to have a purpose-built stage and entertainment area, but you're going to experience all of those events holographically. And the same thing with retail shopping. You'll have different shelving installations inside of stores, but there's nothing there because everything is projected holographically. So that's the idea, is to create a physical environment with nothing in it. That's the name Blank, right? Blank XR. It's a blank canvas that's going to be painted with holographic realities on top.
All right, that's clear. We're out of time. Thank you very, very much, Denise and Mike. Really appreciate that. Great project.
Thank you.
Miriam's posted up the link in the chat. I'd recommend everybody go and look at that. If I can ask you now to press your link button.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Right. I'm now going to move swiftly on to introduce our next project, which is going to be presented by Sebastian and Michael, who join now. I'll let them introduce themselves, but you're going to hear about the development of virtual garments, I think, and the application of some of the technologies we've been hearing about, or the potential application into the fashion world. Sebastian, Michael, over to you.
Thank you. Just 1 second while I should have jumped in here. So hopefully that works great. Welcome everyone, and thank you for giving up some of your precious time. I'm Michael King, CEO of Numerian Software, and I'm here with my colleague Sebastian Wiendl, who's here to answer the difficult questions. So we're delighted to take this opportunity to give you a sneak peek at some of the exciting technology we've been developing over the last 18 months with the support of Innovate UK. Our background is in garment simulation for the movie industry. We essentially make simulation tools that allow the movie guys to make magic happen. And when you see, well, in fact, you often don't see, but when they're taking a human and putting them through some horrible experience, often they are creating digital doubles, and it's got to the point now where you cannot, even on a 70mm screen, see the difference. And the garment simulation is obviously a key part of that, because you need the believability of the human face, and you need the believability of the garment as well. And so our tools are being used for the very high-end, believable garment simulation. And that's what we've been doing for the best part of the last 10 years. And most of the big movies you've seen in the last 5+ years are using that technology. However, with the ever-growing push for online experiences, partly accelerated by the arrival of COVID, and also encouraged by the increasing compute available in the cloud, we're seeing a lot of interest from other markets for high-quality garment simulation. And it's important to realize the difference here, and you probably got that from my earlier description, between what we're doing and, for example, garments in a video game. You know, it's a chalk and cheese difference there between the two goals. However, these other markets that are interested in high-end garment simulation, they don't have $100 million budgets like the movie guys do, and they don't have teams of character effects artists for every frame. And so they need our help, not just to have the same tools as the movie developers, but also to have a cost-effective way of bringing those tools to bear. And so we've been developing the Carbon Digital Fashion Engine, which essentially is a workflow. It's a workflow to take, just 1 second here, yeah, to take the standard tools that artists use today for creating garments. And these are often tools that are used in the fashion industry, like Marvelous Designer and Optitex and many others. And to take the output from those tools, the 3D model output from those tools, to apply some carbon magic to it without needing to be a super expert or having a team of experts to help you with that. And then to deliver that into a live environment, either in the cloud or locally, depending on your particular application. And so that's what essentially we've been doing. And the applications range from fashion, which is obviously a big focus for this, but also actually the movie guys are doing a lot of virtual production. Some of them are producing even movies now within the real-time game engines, and some of them are doing a mock-up. So a lot of movies these days are doing an entire end-to-end mock-up inside a virtual environment before they shoot a single frame of movie. Because there are lots of complications when you're producing a movie, even things like camera positions. You know, the director wants a certain shot, well, it may be there's a pillar in the way. And you don't find all that out unless you either do a virtual mock-up or you know, when you get on set, which is obviously very expensive. And there's architecture, there's medical training, etc., etc. And so one question you might ask if you've got some experience in this area is why do I need carbon for this? You know, can't I just take my animation frames from my garment creation package and bring those into the virtual environment? And the answer is yes, you can. And quite a few people are doing that already. But what you're doing there is you're bringing in pre-baked frames. And that's rather limiting in terms of what you can do with those. You can essentially play them in the same way that you played them in your garment design package. But there are a lot of other scenarios that these virtual garments can be applied to if you have the power of carbon to do more than just replay what you simulated in your garment design package. And so this is some of the ways laid out on this slide that you may want to use carbon. You may want to combine garments in multiple different ways on demand. So not just maybe how you simulated them, or even garments from different packages, or garments, you know, you can imagine after these technologies have been around for 5 to 10 years, you're going out to buy a new jumper, and you want to look at it over the top of your existing clothes that you happen to have the 3D models for, because you were able to store them away when you purchase those garments in the first place. Or we want to do virtual try-on. We want to try and see how those garments will fit on our body. You may want to do soft skin simulation. You know, all these packages today, they only do hard bodies. So, you know, at the end of the day, clothes squash your body and your body pushes the clothes. You know, none of us, with very, very few exceptions, have no fat at all on us. And so that's good for swimsuits, lingerie, and even things like, you know, we'll look at it in a minute, face mask simulation. You may want to animate those characters live with mocap. You know, it may be some sort of virtual production, and you want to drive that character with live mocap, for example, or interact with other objects in the scene. And finally, you might want more than just garments on the character. You might want accessories, chains around the neck, handbags that push against the clothing, or it might be a product design demo where you've got a mask with rigid and soft parts pushing on the face. So today, Carbon can support all these capabilities offline, and we've been working over the last 18 months to bring this capability efficiently into the cloud. Not just simulation, because in the movie industry, we would typically provide the simulation capability, and another team within the movie company would do the high quality visual rendering. But if you're trying to do this efficiently in a cost-effective way, you need to take that those render meshes and textures from the garment simulation package where you've set up a beautiful looking garment right through to the real-time engine. And so we've had to not just address how do we do this with Carbon, but also for the simulation, but also how do we bring those render message and match those up to a re-simulated garment in whatever scene you've now presented it in. And so at this point, I would love to show you Carbon running in the cloud on our cloud server, but we're not quite there yet. We're still a few weeks away from going live. And so I'd like to walk you through a few scenarios captured from our testbed environment. And these images are actually some test images from the actual environment that we've rendered from that environment. And so the first one I'd like to talk about is the fast and accurate multi-layer outfit creation. So you can see here that basically we have these choices of one garment on top of another in many different forms, additional garments. And this simulates very quickly. It's currently about 1 second per garment. And we can do, from the 3D environment, we present back by default six images. Essentially, you can see a set of 6 at the bottom here. And also we present some close-ups as well. We've got by default 2 close-up images. And you can see all the detail in the garment here, all the stitching. And there's a lot of information here. I mean, that here in this image, we are rendering about 6 million triangles. And that's key so that we can zoom in and see the detail on the garments as well. The next scenario I'd like to talk about is virtual try-on. There have been lots of attempts to do this with image warping and photography, and all of them basically fail because you can't get a reliable fit and experience in all the different scenarios. And so simulation is the only way you can do that. Yes, it takes a tiny bit longer than if you're doing an image warp. And yes, it's slightly more costly to create, but it's much more robust and reliable. And so we can actually drape these garments on any reasonable sized body with no real cost of the body shape change. So we're still at our roughly 1 second a garment here. And you can see here we've got a selection of 3 different body sizes. And we can change them on the fly within the web environment and resimulate for a different size body. And that they can be predefined body shapes, or they can be body shapes that you have entered through the web interface.
Michael, we've just got a couple of minutes left.
Okay.
So Sebastian has got things that you want to come in and say at this point, or I'll leave you to use your last 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So those are the things that I can show you from the engine. But just to finish off with a couple of things that are from our offline carbon tools that we don't yet have integrated into the engine. And that's this integration between soft and rigid objects. And so whether it's a chain or whether it's something complex, garments or cloth is not just about garments. It's also about shoelaces, or just rushing on to the next slide, if it'll let me. Okay. There we go. And it's also about face masks, which is topical at the moment, and we're carrying out a COVID response project involving face mask fitting. And this is a soft face, so this is not a rigid face. This is not a hard face. It's a soft face with rigid parts on a mask and soft parts on a mask. Let me figure out how to get onto the next slide here. There we go. And so that's what we got to present to you today. And thank you very much for sharing your time with us. And we'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Michael. That was really very interesting. Actually quite different from what I was expecting. I don't know about anyone else. I hadn't appreciated those last couple of images you showed of the shoelaces or the wrist bracelet, whatever it was. That was really interesting. Just Sebastian, I don't know if you've been on screen. Anything you want to add to what Michael's just said? But then I'm afraid we are pretty much out of time. But it'd be good to hear from you, and perhaps a little bit about how you're evolving the technology and how you're looking to apply it.
Yeah, of course. As Mike said, we're coming from the movie industry where people sometimes spend like days or weeks or months on something like the shoelaces and accessories. But now with people having more high resolution screens and people just wanting things faster and using it in so many more aspects, we're really striving to make this technology available for everyone, not just the big studios that have big budgets. I want you to be able to go on your phone and say, I want this outfit, here's my body size, and I want to mix and match like this. And maybe I got a nice chain, or I got a big watch, or whatever you have, and then just press and see how it looks. We want just empower everyone with this technology, not just the big movie companies. So we really think there's a big market there, and we hope we can get some interest and a lot of partners in this technology. Okay,
superb. Thank you. I might have accidentally kicked Michael off, so apologies to Michael if that's the case, unless he kicked himself off.
That's all right.
But I'm going to say thank you now to, I'm looking in the chat box. If anybody's got any questions, please put them in. There's a plug there from Sarah. So Numerian's taking part in the data-driven design session tomorrow. So we look forward to seeing that. So Sebastian, I'll ask you to exit stage left. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll bring on Sharma Rahman, who is from London College of Fashion, I think, and who's going to be talking to us about Away to Mars. So another fashion project, which I'm really looking forward to hearing about. Sharma, over to you.
Hello, everyone. We are actually also going to be part of the data-driven design session tomorrow, a little bit later, I believe, around 3 o'clock. So first of all, I was wondering if I could share some slides with everybody. So I'll do here. So here we go. So Away to Mars is a pioneering fashion company, which has already created a version of co-creation platform, which is a static HTML website platform currently that encourages designers to start collaborating with each other. But as part of the BFTT and SME partnership with the London College of Fashion and the DA Lab, I've been asked to come on board as the R&D project lead for the next stage in this. So like an evolution from said static web page into a technological platform where we are investigating how to bring in AI and other cutting edge technologies in order to spark creativity, really encourage collaborative fashion design, and also create an experience that is way more gamified to engage not only designers but consumers as well, in order to contribute to a co-creation sort of body of work between humans, but also obviously between the AI. Just a little description as to who I am. I am a creative practitioner within theater, within music. I work a lot between technology and analog. As you can see, I have been working with the Mimu gloves for my own music as well. Very much bring in this multidisciplinary angle to the way that I also conduct my scientific hat, and specifically looking at the neuroscience underlying creativity. So the neuroscience and complex sort of neurological physical systems that's happening inside the brain as we are doing different creative activities and different mental stages of creative thinking. And from this perspective, I have been very lucky to have founded a number of different companies, one which is mixing together multidisciplinary concepts and also multisensory concepts, which is jugular, joining the head and the heart. So that's bringing together art, science, philosophy, and lived visceral performance and theater experiences, a lot of which has been outlined in a TEDx talk. And also, if you wanted to read more about the PhD, that's within this particular this particular book as well. And I have recently founded my own company that is productizing that PhD called Neurocreate, where we are essentially utilizing this idea of AI in order to spark creativity in the brainstorming, ideation, and conceptualization stages, but utilizing the underlying neuroscience of creativity to design this platform. So there's a specific sort of approach called neurodesign. You might be wondering also what's happening here. I was lucky enough to be the lead in a 24-part drama series, which is meant to have been Southeast Asia's first supernatural detective thriller. So think Buffy and X-Files and Doctor Who all rolled into one. And here's me freezing my my feet off in the middle of Antarctica, getting multisensorially stimulated in order to improvise over here. So bringing all of these sort of things together, and this is also by the way, creating different sort of multisensory experiences to do with actually tasting sound and how that can actually influence how you listen to something, depending on what you're tasting. So bringing all these together, this AI angle to everything, I was asked to apply for the R&D project lead for Away to Mars. And, you know, we started working on this since May, so it's at a relatively earlier stage, but, you know, we started with the idea of how can AI even come into the co-creation process? So on that note, I will just go towards a video that can hopefully show you what we're doing here. So you can also see that this is a Creative Clusters, ARHC, and Digital Anthropology Lab, UAL, BFTT collaboration. These are we're starting with a nice slow-mo here of some of the AI and human collaboration experiments that have been going on here. And I'll look into this in a little bit more detail. I've been told that you can't really hear me talking anyway over here, but these are some of hold on, let's bring that down a little bit. So yeah, these are some of the sort of original dresses and outfits that Away to Mars would have created. I'm just so that I can show you a little bit of the sort of aesthetics. This is our founder, Alfredo Aurobio, who started Away to Mars 4 years ago now. And they not only enable sort of co-creation with their community of designers, but also, you know, they have in-house designers, and they work with brands such as Missoni over here, for example, where they're, again, opening out the playing field to other designers within the community. And then all of this is ink printed and pattern cut in order to create their beautiful, you know, finished products. And, you know, this is some of the sort of co-creation process impulse or stimulation that I started using when doing all of these experiments, mixing the sort of aesthetics that Away to Mars already has, but with different textures that have been, for example, generated with AI, and then mixing the two things together to see whether it gives us a nice sparker for creativity, or, you know, even results in some sort of finished product here that we can, you know, take over to then be printed. So just giving you an example over here, for example, let's see if I can fast forward a teeny bit. Maybe I can actually show you the exact sort of videos for that. Over here, we're also looking at how we can bring in other elements, not just fashion. Here, this is actually photographs of mountains, and whether that can actually also influence some of the creative aesthetic or sparkers or direction of something. Here, this is botanical illustrations and bird foliage, animal illustrations, and again, how that could potentially be merged and melded into very interesting new creations. And I'll go into this in a little bit more detail. And yeah, so the rest of this are all sort of examples of that, which I'll just go into a bit more detail now. Back to our screen here. So over here, you can see this is actually a collaboration between Away to Mars, the designers within their community, Missoni, and the AI, for example. And these are between Away to Mars and the AI. And just to sort of show you a little sneak peek in my experimentation so far, the behind the scenes, here are, for example, textural prints that have been generated completely by AI, not a human collaboration here, but it was fed with textures and prints, but not actually with the Away to Mars aesthetic. But then bringing in, you know, some of the actually before that, this is then, you know, masked in order to give some semblance of how it might even look like in a garment shape, like a dress, for example. And then, you know, here, again, these are just swathes of color being sort of masked onto, again, generated with the AI and masking in order to see how that might look like on a garment. And then here, we have this idea of bringing in, for example, I was mentioning other elements to fashion, such as having images or photographs of mountains. And this has been mixed, for example, with some of the Away to Mars's aesthetic. And here, just to give you a bit more of an example, this was actually, like, as I mentioned, created with Away to Mars, merged with some botanical illustrations, some bird illustrations. And then, you know, some of these actually look like, you know, finished products that, you know, one might even imagine being able to wear straight up. You can actually see also variations, and you can see we are starting to ask and or answer the question, you know, what is AI's role in this creative process and also in co-creation? Is it that it creates many iterations of something that's kind of similar, and then, you know, as we all know, you know, we can have a human in the role of a decision maker, so a curator. But then what's really interesting are all these cases of sort of transitional phases. These don't look like a dress, but could these liminal spaces essentially spark new creative ideas, so that can even change the shape of a garment altogether? And then here, these are some of the experiments, I would say, that are leading to some way more interesting prints than either of these two, say, put together, or this on its own. And what we've done here is almost a 3-layered way of looking at how to create prints that could then be overlaid onto garment shapes. So that's Away to Mars's aesthetics, combining with other non-fashion sort of aesthetics, such as mountains, say, or birds, and then also mixing it with completely AI-generated textures and prints. And we're getting some really pretty, very interesting sort of, you know, these are dresses I would wear, for example. And here we have some potentially more sort of catway or runway even ready things to look at. And so this is all sort of quite in the sort of, just to show you a little bit how we might have done some of this training. I don't know if you can see some of the videos, but I'm going to put this in a little bit more of slow motion so you can see how, you know, as we're training the AI, how this kind of morphs. Is quite a beautiful sort of transition. These are some interesting liminal spaces, you know, and training this with Away to Mars's own aesthetics, look at the very interesting sort of results that eventually leads to. And then it creates, for example, these are some of the different end results that the trained algorithm can then produce. So you can see there are so many different possibilities. And the aim is, how can we also create many, many possibilities for co-creation for both designers and consumers alike? Can we utilize the AI essentially to create a little palette of ingredients to choose from, say, if you're a consumer? Or can we also utilize this for your experienced designers to take them that one step further in their creative journey and creative process? So we're now currently, you know, putting together all of these sort of different results. I'm just going to stop screen sharing now.
Sharma, we need to wind up now as well. So if I can.
Yes,
yep,
that's it for me. Yeah, so, you know, these are these sort of initial experiments that we're now kind of putting together to create a user experience for an MVP, toward something that people will be hopefully able to play with and, you know, help us you know, get on the ground from their feedback in the next sort of few months. So yeah, watch this space.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you, Sharma. And I absolutely echo the point that Denise has made in the chat, that a brilliant blend of analog and virtual. And I think I was going to ask you, and I think you've answered it, which is about the application, which is, as you were describing, is both for consumers to actually co-design, but actually really good for, well, not just young or new designers, but actually experienced designers too, because it's, I thought, a really good example of where AI is being used and can work alongside the human to actually that co-creation between AI and the designer.
Yeah, and I think you know, some of these experimentations, and I'm glad that Denise picked up on that as well. It has obviously been governed by my own sort of experience and or research, looking into the human mind, essentially the neurological underpinnings, especially as related to creative processes, creative activities. You know. Essentially what they call neurocognition. So how can we use or position the AI in a way that's not taking away from what we have, but actually, you know, being there to inspire us from maybe, you know, let's just say stayed pathways, you know, the pathways that we always like to take. That's maybe potentially a bad habit that we might have when it comes to creativity, but how can it actually be used to like enhance some of the good habits that we have, which is the ability to even look at things from lots of different angles. So that's the sort of blend that I've been looking at. And, you know, potentially, yeah, you have a garment shape that's a completely new thing now, for example, or, you know, you've seen that it's got this sort of really minute detailed prints, for example. And I think that's something that's quite interesting and potentially hard to reproduce as well.
Okay, that's great. Just, we're out of time, unfortunately, but one last question. Away to Mars, where's the name come from?
Wow, actually, that's potentially something for Alfredo to potentially say. I mean, please do check us out on A Way to Mars. But we're in fact thinking of calling this particular angle the platform for the co-creation with the AI Supernova. So I think we're going to carry on with this.
Fantastic. That works really well. And Supernova, I like, yeah. Okay, let's leave it there. Sharma, thank you very, very much. Thank you to everybody who stayed with us. Thank you also to Guy, Denise, Mike, Michael, and Sebastian, the different participants earlier. So please head on over to the main stage now, or go and grab some lunch, whatever it is you're doing. Thanks again, Sharma. Great session. Really, really enjoyed listening to you. Thank you.